Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got something a little different. Our listener has provided an extraordinary stack of sources.
Yeah, this is a good one.
We're not wading through dense academic journals or, complex economic forecasts this time.
No. The sources today, they actually come in the form of a detailed narrative. You could call it an adventure story about a trio of highly methodical young investigators.
And that's what's so fascinating, because for us, a good source is a good source.
Exactly. The wrapper doesn't matter. Quality research is quality research.
Yeah.
And this narrative, it's centered around a group called the Three Investigators, but it contains an incredible amount of factual data.
Like what?
Well, you've got complex logistical planning, you have layered disinformation, a deep reliance on historical records, and just some expert-level chronological deduction. We're essentially treating it as a meticulously documented cold case file.
Absolutely. Our mission here is to really dissect the events on Skeleton Island. This deep dive is all about understanding how a seemingly routine assignment.
Acting in a movie.
Right. Acting in a movie on this supposedly haunted, very isolated island uncovers not one, but two entirely separate mysteries.
And that's the key. Two of them. One dates back centuries to the golden age of piracy.
And the other, a modern, high-stakes armored car robbery. And they're both linked by this single patch of desolate coastline.
It's the ultimate lesson in separating myth from, a meticulously planned modern crime. We've got pirates, a long-dead ghost, a major financial heist.
And a film crew just caught right in the middle of it all.
The sheer density of red herrings here is, it's just remarkable.
So let's establish the core question for you, the learner, right up front. When historical myth and modern organized crime collide in a remote location, how does careful, rigorous chronological analysis become the only tool sharp enough to cut through all those layers of elaborate disinformation that the culprits have set up?
We're going to use the investigative methods of the three investigators to chart the truth.
So let's start with the basics. The central organizational structure. Any high-stakes investigation, it really requires clearly defined roles, and T3I, the three investigators, they provide this brilliant small-scale model.
That structure is the absolute bedrock of their success.
Mm-hmm.
The group is based in Rocky Beach, California, and it's anchored by Jupiter Jones, the first investigator.
Jupiter is the brains.
He's explicitly the brains, yes. The strategist, the synthesizer. The thing about him is, he doesn't necessarily need to be present at every single physical action point.
Because his strength is in the analysis.
Exactly. His strength lies in linking these disparate pieces of information
Yeah.
into facts and then transforming them into actual knowledge.
Right. He performs that truly complex synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Pete Crenshaw, the second investigator.
Pete's the action guy.
He's the physical presence, tall, athletic. He's often the one who's dealing with the dangerous, immediate stuff. He's the muscle, the operative for when things, go sideways.
And crucially, rounding out the team, we have Bob Andrews, records and research. Bob is the studious member. He's responsible for absorbing all the history, the maps, the old press clippings, the entire context of a case.
And for this particular deep dive into Skeleton Island, his work is indispensable.
Oh, absolutely. Bob's meticulous research on the island's 3-century-long lore it's the foundation for everything. Without his contextualization, Jupiter wouldn't have the necessary data points to make the chronological links that end up solving the whole crime. They really are a true investigative machine.
So their assignment here is, it's a bit unorthodox. They're hired directly by the legendary director, Alfred Hitchcock.
Right.
They fly east to the location of Skeleton Island under this cover of being three natural boys diving for pirate treasure.
Which is for a short film, right?
Exactly, a short feature film. It's directed by Harry Norris, and it's being shot at the same time as the main feature, which is called Chase Me Faster.
And that cover story is just brilliant. It's so effective because it gives them a legitimate, completely harmless reason to be poking around in all these suspicious places. No one's going to question three kids looking for pirate treasure for a movie.
But the real mission, of course, is to investigate this continuous low-level sabotage that's been impacting the main film production.
Yeah, we're talking about continuous harassment. It's clearly intended to drive the production away.
Stuff like equipment being stolen.
Boats being tinkered with.
Right. Not serious enough to cause a major injury or, a permanent shutdown, but just enough to introduce these persistent delays and, of course, massive expense.
They even hired a local guard, a guy named Tom Faraday. But the nuisance actions just kept happening.
So the intent is pretty clear.
Oh, it's crystal clear. They want the island isolated and deserted. just like it had been for years. And this tells us immediately that the sabotage is not just some random vandalism.
No, it's defensive.
It's defensive or proprietary. Someone views the presence of this movie crew as a massive threat to something they are protecting on that island.
So let's turn to the island itself. Skeleton Island. I mean, it's really a character in its own right.
Absolutely.
Bob's research tells us the name comes from two things. First, its unusual skull-like shape.
And second, the fact that it was an ancient Indian sacred burying ground. A captain named White apparently named it back in 1565 because the sheer number of bones that were just constantly being exposed by the shifting sands.
It's got a pretty notorious history, too, long before the film crew ever showed up.
A long history. It was a known pirate haunt until about 1717. I mean, figures like Blackbeard supposedly used it. But for the purpose of our analysis, we really need to focus in on one in particular, Captain One-Ear.
Because his lost treasure is the basis of that first historical mystery.
That's the one.
Okay, so now we have to lock in the first critical timeline. This is the true local legend, the one that initially earned the island its haunted reputation and drove people away 25 years before our investigators ever showed up.
Yes. This is the ghost of Sally Farrington.
Tell us about her.
This is the historical baseline. It's the emotional foundation of the island's whole fear factor. So 25 years prior, there was a little pleasure park on the island. And Sally Farrington, who was known for being, let's say, very stubborn.
Right.
She refused to get off the merry-go-round during a sudden, very violent electrical storm. She apparently proclaimed that no storm was going to stop her ride.
And fatefully.
Fatefully, lightning struck the central metal pole of the carousel. It killed her instantly.
Yeah.
A really tragic story of defiance, I guess.
And the legend took root right away.
Immediately. It was said her ghost would return on stormy nights to finish her interrupted ride. Locals reported seeing this white-clad figure, hearing the carousel music floating across the bay, and seeing the lights blazing.
And there was even physical evidence, wasn't there? The owner found something.
That's right. The owner apparently found a soaking wet handkerchief with her initials on it after one of these alleged sightings, which just solidified the terror for the whole community.
So that sequence of events, the tragedy, the reported hauntings, it successfully turned the pleasure park into a huge financial liability.
Of course. It led to its eventual closure and decay. The island became completely deserted for years.
But let's remember that number. The genuine tragedy, the Sally Farrington incident, happened 25 years ago. We have to treat this as timeline A.
The investigation begins with immediate confirmation that their highly sensitive identity as investigators has been completely compromised.
Right, which sets the stage for the first major red herring.
Exactly. They're met by a local named Sam Robinson, who's known as a bit of a prankster.
Yeah.
And Sam immediately greets them as the three kid detectives from Hollywood, despite all the secrecy surrounding their assignment.
And the source explains exactly how this confidential information got out.
It leaked because the local community operates on a party line telephone system.
Which, for anyone listening who doesn't know, is what?
A party line is a shared telephone circuit. Multiple households, multiple businesses, they're all connected to the same physical line. So anyone on that circuit could, and often did, just pick up the phone and listen in on private conversations.
So when Pete's father and the director were discussing this highly secret plan with Alfred Hitchcock back in California,
Multiple people in Fishingport were likely listening in. And Sam Robinson, who clearly has a low regard for propriety, weaponized that information.
he turns his practical joke into something much more dangerous.
The dangerous act of isolation. He drives them to an unmarked road and just strands them on this smaller, rocky satellite island called the Hand.
In a thunderstorm.
In a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
They're marooned, they're helpless, and they're completely cut off.
And it's while they're stranded there that they confirm a key piece of geographical lore.
Yeah. Yes. They watch the famed blowhole in action. This is a geological feature where the wave pressure forces seawater up a narrow channel and it shoots it out like a geyser with this very distinctive deep woo-wish sound.
And this confirms the physical reality of the island's unique structure, a structure that's going to become central to solving, well, both mysteries.
Their rescuer is a young Greek boy, Chris Markos. He's the son of a struggling disabled sponge diver.
And Chris found them because he was perceptive enough to pick up on Sam Robinson's odd choice of language.
Exactly. He overheard Sam repeatedly emphasizing the word hand while he was boasting about the prank to his friends. I'll hand them a surprise.
That's some exceptional deduction on Chris's part.
It really is.
Yet he immediately becomes the prime suspect for all the ongoing sabotage. This is a deliberate and highly effective red herring.
It really is. The movie crew, especially Pete's father, sees Chris as suspicious from the get-go. He's poor, he's struggling, he's a foreigner in a very tight-knit American coastal town, and he has this local reputation.
Which was probably manufactured.
Likely manufactured, or at least exaggerated by prejudice. He's seen as a potential thief. And the actual culprits, they are relying entirely on this local bias to deflect suspicion from themselves.
By making Chris the convenient outsider.
They ensure that any act of sabotage is just easily attributed to him. It's a perfect setup.
Okay, let's pivot to the ghost sightings. The movie crew is highly superstitious about these recent alleged phantom sightings of Sally Farrington on the repaired carousel. But the hired gar, Tom Faraday, he steps forward with the physical explanation for the recent scare.
Yes, Faraday confesses. He says he was the ghost in the most recent sighting.
How does he explain it?
He says that he heard a motorboat, which he suspected was a thief. So he turned on the carousel lights and the music to go investigate. And because he was wearing a yellow storm slicker, the distant onlookers misinterpreted the light bouncing off of it as the white figure of Sally Farrington.
So that successfully debunks the recent physical manifestation of the ghost. But the question remains, why did the ghost story resurface at all? The tragedy was 25 years ago. The ghost wasn't actively seen for years, until about 10 years ago.
And this brings us to the first crucial, undisputed piece of data that blows the modern crime wide open. Tom Faraday's backstory.
This is a key moment.
It is. While walking with the boys, Faraday volunteers a highly specific and painful anecdote.
He shares that his crippled left arm was the result of a $100,000 armored car robbery in Fishingport.
Exactly 10 years prior.
Right. He explains that the money all paper cash was seen being dumped overboard by the perpetrators, the Ballinger brothers, Jim and Bill.
The Ballingers were caught and jailed, but the money itself was just presumed lost forever, rotted away by the seawater.
Hold on a second. We have to challenge this. Why would a victim of a horrific, life-altering armed robbery just volunteer that traumatic story to 3 teenagers he'd just met?
Exactly. That sounds less like catharsis and more like, a deliberate establishment of his credentials.
If he were genuinely a victim, the trauma might keep him silent. But by volunteering this highly specific, chronologically precise detail, Faraday is accomplishing 2 very critical things for the criminals.
Right. First, he establishes himself as this trustworthy victim who was physically harmed by the Ballinger gang. This guarantees he's never going to be looked at as a possible accomplice.
And second, and this is the most important part for Jupiter, he locks in timeline B 10 years ago.
We now have an undeniable convergence. The armed robbery happened 10 years ago. The culprits, the Ballinger brothers, were captured 10 years ago.
They were released from prison exactly when the 3 investigators arrived.
And the modern resurgence of the ghost of Sally Farrington, this renewed effort to keep the island isolated, also began roughly 10 years ago, coinciding perfectly with the Ballingers' imprisonment.
That timing is it's too perfect to be a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. The criminals, knowing they had to wait a decade for their freedom, needed a continuous, effective, and, socially accepted method of guarding their loot without physically being there.
And what better way to guard a deserted island
than by exploiting its pre-existing 25-year-old legacy of supernatural fear, its sophisticated criminal calculus.
So they knew if they kept the island deserted and spooky, no one would stumble upon their hidden cash while they served their time.
Exactly. And Faraday, who got his arm broken during the job, was the trusted inside man. He was tasked with maintaining that atmosphere of isolation by periodically creating the ghost illusion and conducting these minor acts of sabotage whenever curiosity like a film crew threatened the location.
So Faraday's story of being a crippled victim is actually the most powerful piece of disinformation in the entire investigation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it provides the absolute truth about the time and the amount of the cash, while simultaneously deflecting any and all suspicion from his true role as the decade-long custodian of the loot.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a moment. We're going to leave the modern crime of Timeline B and dive deep into the genuine, centuries-old mystery of Timeline C.
Captain One Ear's lost treasure.
This pirate lore is what drew the movie crew to the island in the first place, right? It provided the initial cover for the T3I.
It did. The legend goes that when Captain One Ear was finally cornered and captured on the hand, his treasure chests were found completely empty.
And he famously taunted his captors.
He did. He said, Baby Jones has my gold doubloons in his grasp now, and he'll hold them tight until he decides to give them back.
For 3 centuries, that grasp riddle was interpreted as meaning the treasure was just lost, scattered across the vast, deep, muddy bottom of the bay. A hopeless search.
But Jupiter connects the riddle directly to the island's unique geography.
And Chris Markos comes back into play here.
He does. Chris, who is desperate to find real treasure to help support his sick father, leads Pete and Bob diving near the hand. They aren't even looking for the mythical treasure at this point. They're just hoping for some scattered artifacts.
But what they find is an eye-shaped passage.
A round opening in the reef that leads into a partially submerged cave system directly beneath the hand.
What's so fascinating here is Jupiter's realization that the word grasp isn't metaphorical at all, it's literal.
It's completely literal. The rock formation of the hand, combined with the presence of that vertical blowhole they witnessed earlier, the one that shoots water into the air, that provides the physical answer to the riddle.
So Captain One Ear, when he was facing capture and certain execution,
he didn't scatter his treasure across the bay. He poured the chests of heavy gold doubloons down the existing massive natural blowhole on the top of the hand.
So the treasure fell straight down.
Straight down into the submerged cave system below, which is the physical grasp of the hand-shaped island.
That is the ultimate pirate maneuver. He wasn't giving it to the sea, he was hiding it in the earth beneath the sea.
Exactly. The coins they find now, maybe 40 or 50 doubloons, are just the remnants. 3 centuries of powerful tidal currents and wave action have scattered a tiny portion of the original treasure out onto the cave bottom. It makes it appear as if the treasure was lost in the sea generally. The bulk of it is likely still buried deep within that blowhole shaft, completely inaccessible.
But the immediate pursuit of just these few remnants, it leads directly to a life-threatening crisis for the investigators and for Chris.
They're down below, and they're gripped by what the source calls treasure fever.
And while they are submerged, Chris's small sailing boat, which was anchored nearby, gets moved by a sudden shift in the current.
The currents around the hand are incredibly strong. They slowly wedge the hull of that boat firmly into the narrow, eye-shaped cave entrance.
They're trapped.
Trapped beneath a rising tide. The situation goes from an adventure to mortal peril in an instant. Their air tanks are running low, and the cave is going to be completely submerged within hours.
This forces Jupiter Jones into a truly magnificent piece of quick thinking, a real-world application of physics and engineering.
He's alerted by Pete's muffled yell. The sound traveled up through the vertical blowhole, and Jupiter recognizes it instantly. He knows the Coast Guard is way too far away to arrive before the tide crests.
So he has to rely on the power and the resources they have immediately available on the island.
Which happens to be the movie crew's equipment. Specifically, Jeff Morton's powerful motorboat.
So what's the plan?
Jupiter instructs Morton to use the motorboat's anchor line, but not for anchoring. He has them attach the line firmly to the hull of the submerged sailing boat that's blocking the entrance.
And
Then, he has Morton start the motorboat and apply full, sustained throttle.
he's using the boat as a winch.
Exactly. This applies continuous, massive mechanical force against the wreckage. The force describes the boat moving sluggishly, as if pulling a whale. The goal isn't speed, it's relentless, powerful pressure applied over time, leveraging the motor's horsepower to slowly drag the wreckage free.
It's a testament to why he's the first investigator.
It is. He takes this seemingly insurmountable problem, a massive wreck wedged into a submerged stone opening, and he solves it using basic, powerful leverage principles under extreme duress. He saves the boys just moments before the water rises too high.
But despite this near-death experience, Chris Markos insists that the doubloon find has to be kept an absolute secret.
He's terrified that the news will instantly lead to a massive swarm of divers, both professional and amateur, and it will ruin his chance to find the rest of the scattered gold.
So they agree, for Chris's sake, to keep the location of the cave concealed. They say only that they found the coins randomly in the surrounding water.
And this secrecy, which was intended as a protective measure, ironically becomes the final trigger for the true climax of the whole story.
Okay, so we have our 2 separate mysteries. The 300-year-old pirate gold and the 10-year-old robbery. We've identified the modern crime's security measure, the ghost hoax, and its custodian, Tom Faraday. Now, the best-laid plans of both the investigators and the criminals fall victim to the very thing that compromised the T3I in the first place.
The party line.
The party line. The entire plot pivots on one person, Mrs. Barton, the landlady.
Right. Despite the boys' insistence on total secrecy, Mrs. Barton sees the pile of gold doubloons when she enters their room.
What does she do?
She immediately gets on the phone and broadcasts the news to her three best friends using that small town's omnipresent party line system.
It's a chain reaction of gossip.
A massive one. It guarantees that by the next morning, the entire community, believing the island holds a huge pirate fortune, is going to converge on Skeleton Island for this unauthorized, completely chaotic treasure hunt.
The island's isolation is about to be utterly destroyed by civilian traffic.
And this is the critical moment. The Ballinger gang, who have just gotten out of prison, and their accomplice Faraday, they now realize their decade-long investment, that stolen paper cash, is about to be discovered by random townspeople just digging up the island.
They have to act now.
Immediately. This forces Jupiter Jones into his moment of genius, the final synthesis that links all three timelines and confirms the true secret.
We have to walk through this deduction step by step to really appreciate how elegant it is.
Okay, start with the motive. Jupiter knew the purpose of all the ongoing activity. So, point one, the continuous pattern of sabotage and ghost stories was designed purely to keep people away from Skeleton Island.
Which means they were guarding something precious.
Right. Point two, the new ghost stories, the ones Faraday was maintaining, they only resurged exactly 10 years ago. This is the key chronological pivot. It disconnects the fear from the original 25-year-old tragedy and anchors it firmly to the modern crime.
Point three, that 10-year mark aligns perfectly with the $100,000 armored car robbery, the one carried out by the Ballinger brothers, where the paper cash was presumed to be lost at sea.
And this leads to the big analytical leap, the one concerning the logistics of the loot. Point four. Jupiter knows that paper money, if it were hidden in salt water or dumped into that blowhole they explored, would have completely rotted away over a decade.
So it had to be hidden somewhere secure and dry.
Exactly. Jupiter deduces that the Ballingers, before they made their escape and got captured, they used the pirate method hiding treasure using the island's geography, but for their modern asset.
They didn't put the paper cash in the submerged cave.
No, that's Timeline C's location. They dumped it in the separate, secure, high-and-dry cave on the main Skeleton Island, ensuring it would survive until their release 10 years later.
This explains why all the sabotage was focused on driving people away from the main island, not the hand, where the actual doubloons were found.
Yes. The pirates hid gold in the wet cave. The modern criminals hid paper money in the dry cave. It's two different treasures, two different locations, two different timelines.
The criminal calculus was ingenious.
It really was. They risked a 10-year prison sentence, knowing that the money would survive safely, guarded by the island's existing spooky reputation. They leveraged a legacy of fierce Sally Farrington's ghost, Timeline A, to protect a modern financial asset, the stolen cash from Timeline B.
So Faraday's role was far more crucial than just performing the phantom sightings. He was the anchor.
He had to be. He had to ensure that the ghost myth remained just scary enough to deter the locals, but not so sensational that it drew in, outside investigators with modern scientific equipment who might have debunked the dry cave's existence much sooner.
So the island's geology provided the perfect vault.
And Faraday provided the perfect long-term security system. But Mrs. Barton's gossip detonated that security system. It forced the gang to retrieve their cash immediately, before everyone else showed up.
Convinced of his deduction, Pete and Bob return to the main island late that final night. They want to investigate the high and dry cave before the town swarms it.
And they're immediately intercepted by Tom Faraday. The victim is finally revealed as the loyal, yet recently double-crossed accomplice.
The confrontation is raw and fast.
It is. Faraday, seeing the boys know too much, he just drops the act. He confirms he was instrumental in the original robbery, which is how he broke his arm. He confesses he's been waiting 10 long years for his one-third share of the $100,000.
And almost immediately, the two Ballinger brothers, Bill and Jim, they appear from the darkness.
They've just collected the heavy sacks of cash from the dry cave. Jupiter had actually recognized Jim earlier in town by his distinctive mermaid tattoo, which confirmed their identity.
The brothers quickly capture and bind the investigators. The situation looks hopeless.
And Faraday confirms his dual role. He maintained the ghost hoax, and he planted Chris Markos' knife at the sabotage sites to frame the convenient outsider. The evidence against Chris would have been overwhelming if the T3I hadn't intervened.
So the Ballingers gather their loot, and they prepare for their getaway on their motorboat, leaving Faraday to deal with the investigators and the impending chaos of the civilian treasure hunt.
But there was one final, crucial twist. And it comes from the very boy they tried so hard to frame,
Chris Markos.
Chris Markos. He'd been released on bail, mostly because the police chief, Nostagon, had an underlying belief in his innocence, and Chris had suspected Faraday.
So he followed him.
He followed him to the island that night.
Chris manages to sneak onto the Ballinger's motorboat, and he unties Pete and Bob.
But knowing the Ballingers will just capture them again as soon as they realize they're loose, Chris executes this brilliant, final, tactical maneuver.
What does he do?
He immediately sabotages their motor, he pulls the spark plug wires, and completely disables the getaway boat,
He seals their fate.
just as they attempt to make their watery escape. And before the Ballingers can retaliate, Chief Nostagon and his men arrive.
How did they know to come?
Jupiter. He relied on the very party line system that initially betrayed his secrecy, and he leveraged that same system to alert the police in time.
And here we see the final breakdown of the whole criminal enterprise.
It just implodes. Faraday, seeing the Ballingers are preparing to cut him out of his decade-long wait, leaving him to face the consequences all alone, he immediately turns on his former accomplices.
It results in this chaotic, desperate brawl right on the beach.
3 men just rolling around fighting over these recovered sacks of paper money. Chief Nostagon has to point his revolver at the writhing pile just to get them to stop. The police take all 3 into custody.
The secret of Skeleton Island is violently exposed, all because a local landlady saw a pile of old Spanish coins.
Amazing.
So looking back, the true secret of Skeleton Island was actually this beautifully layered dual mystery, and it was only separable through chronological rigor.
Exactly. Timeline C, the 300-year-old truth. Captain One Ear's actual pirate gold, the doubloons, was found only in small remnants, scattered out of the submerged Grasp cave system beneath the hand. That was the island's myth.
And Timeline B, the 10-year-old crime. The modern treasure was $100,000 in stolen paper cash. It was successfully hidden in the separate, high and dry cave on the main Skeleton Island.
Guarded by the ghost myth that they established 10 years prior by exploiting the 25-year-old tragedy of Sally Farrington from Timeline A.
The fallout is almost universally positive, though, barring the arrest of the 3 culprits.
Right. The ghost hoax is publicly debunked after Faraday's confession, which allows the filming of Chase Me Faster to continue without any more delays or labor problems.
And Jupiter, who's always the entrepreneur, he takes Mrs. Barton's massive gossip leak and just turns it into gold.
He does. The planned civilian treasure hunt, which threatened to expose the crime, is captured on film, and it becomes a successful short feature called Treasure Fever.
It showcases the comical frenzy of the town digging everywhere but the right spots.
And Chris Markos, the boy they tried so hard to frame, becomes the unexpected hero and star of that short film.
Crucially, the massive reward money for the recovered $100,000 is given entirely to Chris Markos.
As it should be. The source affirmed he was the one who foiled the Ballingers' final escape attempt.
And this is such a powerful, satisfying resolution. That reward money, combined with his acting earnings, it was enough for Chris to get the necessary medical treatment for his sick father.
And to realize their dream, returning home to Greece to live as a fisherman.
It's a really powerful statement about how rigorous deduction overcame powerful prejudice and appearance. The guard was a thief, and the suspected thief was the hero.
It really is. The investigation confirms that understanding and linking distinct timelines is just a necessary skill for any type of detective work, whether it is physical or analytical. If Jupiter hadn't used that 10-year mark of the robbery to override the 25-year-old mark of the ghost tragedy, the true motive for the sabotage it never would have been exposed.
It really makes you reflect on the long-term, calculated risk the Ballinger gang took. They knew they could sacrifice a decade of their lives to guarantee they'd retrieve their loot later, all protected by a ghost.
So the only remaining doubloons from Captain One Ear's original massive haul were those small coins scattered by the tide, found by the boys. And it makes you wonder, if the Ballingers hadn't been forced into immediate action by that accidental information leak, Mrs. Barton's gossip about the pirate gold, would the secrets of Skeleton Island, the Phantom, the sabotage, and the $100,000 in cash have remained locked away just waiting for another 10 years?